Hi, it's Ursula from ursula-smith.com, and I had done a video on the concept that I'm going to talk about here today. And I'm starting out in Photoshop because I just kind of wanted to walk you through how I came up with this and the steps it took leading up to working on this project. So I have a new cutter, the Juliet, the Siser Juliet, and I downloaded their software, the Leonardo Design Studio, and did kind of played around a little bit with print and cuts and cutting and test cutting and all that. And so then I was in the midst of making these cards. And so they're this layer is just a background. And I had come in to print some more of these, and I was like, oh, that would be cool if I could do a print and cut of these birds, layer them on top, pop them up, etc., and make a print and cut of the birds. So I did that, and I actually have a little bit of a video on just doing that option. But then I started thinking, be even cooler if I could have an outline of the birds, print the birds in inkjet, and then print the outline in the laser on my laser printer, so that I could then use my laminator or foiling machine to foil the outline. I have a glossy black foil that looks really cool to kind of pop up and pop out some details. So I've kind of played with this idea of printing in inkjet, coming over the top to print accents or even additional images on top of the inkjet. And if it's just a background and then I'm printing something on top, like the outline of a flower that I'm then going to go and print and cut, that's easy enough to do. I don't have to align anything. However, in this case, if I print just the birds, I need to have the outlines aligned more or less exactly. And then now if I want to take that whole thing, that whole print, and cut it on the Juliet using print and cut, then I have to have it really aligned. And I kind of explained that in the previous video where I did everything from Leonardo. Leonardo, in order to print the inkjet and the laser prints, the overlays, I had to print twice, which is fine, one to each printer, but I couldn't figure out a way to turn off the registration marks for printing in the laser. And so those registration marks are what basically drives the print and cut, and so they needed to be aligned exactly. So I'm giving you all this as background so that you don't have to sit through that that long video if you don't want to. But that was kind of my thinking for this project, how I ended up here, and then why I'm now back doing it a different way. So I had figured out, before I even started doing the print and cut, how to align and outline and print it from Photoshop. I tried to use properties on my printers. My printers are very old. They print with different margins. One is very inflexible, the inkjet. As far as I remember, when I tried this the first go round, it was difficult, if not impossible, to tweak the margins on my inkjet. On my laser, there was some capability, but I just couldn't get it as precise as I wanted. And so what I finally came down to was I'm going to take the outline. I basically kind of figured out from doing multiple prints what the offset would have to be if I moved the outline so that it would line up during the print. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through that whole process. So again, it's going to be another long video. You're still going to have to do trial and error because different printers are going to have different margins. Your margins actually might line up. You might not have to even play around at all. But if your margins are different on the printers and the printers don't have associated software to let you fiddle with the margins, or it's confusing and not consistent, as is my case, then this might be the way that you want to go about doing it. Again, if you're going, I mean, you could watch the beginning part of it if you're not doing a print and cut, but then if you're doing a print and cut, I'll show you how to bring this all into Leonardo or not. We'll kind of go back and forth between Photoshop and Leonardo. So I'm using Photoshop. This might be possible with other photo editing software. I've tried a couple of other ones trying to wean my way off of Adobe, but I haven't found anything that I really like. I'm forgetting the name. There's a newer one out that used to be a kind of its own thing, and now Canva's taken it over. And I tried it, and it had a huge bug that it was unusable for me. So, but if it works for you, you can probably use that. And I'll put it in the blog post. I just can't remember the name of it right now. So anyway, that doesn't even, you can go off and figure out whether you can accomplish all this in your photo editing software if you don't have Photoshop. So we start here. This is the background. I'm not actually going to use this other than I had gone through and used drawing tools and masks to isolate the birds. And so I was left with this layer where it's just the birds. And so I selected all of them, and actually I didn't create a new file. I just came up here and saved as, save as, and then I saved it as a ping. So the birds, and this is basically it. So the birds come out with nothing around them, and that ended up being able to be pulled into Leonardo as my print cut, and you'll see that in a little bit. Then I came back in here, and using smart filters, I created an outline. So I'm going to do something slightly different in this video. When I was getting set up to tape this, I realized, when I saved this outline, I saved it as a JPEG. And so when I imported it in, the entire background was white. If I save this as a ping now, the outlines will basically be the bird shapes. So I may make another video because I'm thinking this might be, so I don't think it's going to help with my print situation, but it's just a different look as you pull the birds in. So I'm going to save this as a ping. And I'll hopefully be able to clear up if you're sitting here scratching your head on what I'm talking about. When we get into Leonardo Design Studio. So I'm going to save this as a ping. And it's going to save with the background transparent. Okay. So at this point, we are going to switch back over into Leonardo Design Studio. So I'm going to pause for a second and do that. And we'll talk about the next steps to accomplish this. Oh, and so just one more thing. So if I were just to print from, actually, we'll talk about that in another step. Sorry, I'm trying to walk through these steps without getting ahead of myself so I don't confuse you. So what we've accomplished so far is we isolated the birds, saved it as a ping. I had done a filter to make this into an outline, saved that as a ping, and now we're going to switch back over into Leonardo Design Studio. Okay, so I am in Leonardo Design Studio, and I am going to import the images that I created in Photoshop, both the inkjet and the laser overlay. I'm going to do the imports of both a JPEG and a PNG just so that you can kind of see the difference and how Leonardo works with each of those choices. And then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with them, because we are going to end up back in Photoshop for the actual print to the printer. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I have a brand new file. I'm on the layers panel. So if you're brand new to Leonardo, usually this is the default. I like to be in the layers panel. And so you just click over to layers. I like to see the cutting mat versus the roll. And so I set it up this way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import the birds. And I have a JPEG and I have a PNG. So I'm going to do the JPEG first. This is a duller version. It's not the one I'm going to end up using, but I want to show you what it does with a JPEG. So the JPEG has the white background. I want to bring it in as a print and cut because I want the outline of the bird so that I can print the whole thing. I need to make sure that the DPI matches my printer and Photoshop so it brings it in at the right size. If it was set to auto, I need to change it. So my setup, it uses 300. So I'm going to click next, and it removes the white background. It determines that all I want in this case is the birds. So the white background is gone, and so I can click next. I'm trying to decide if I want to show you something. I'm going to show you something very quick. If I needed to tweak, I can use the drawing tools. So I could come in here, I could do a rectangle to select. I could use sketch to add to what Leonardo has determined. So let's just do that. Okay, so that's interesting. So because I went in and added, I removed, sorry. All right, this is one thing you need to pay attention to. I forgot to change to include. So I actually removed some of what Leonardo had determined. So I need to include, I need to go back and re-go over and include back in the section that I just removed. So I added basically now to the selection that Leonardo had determined initially. Click next. And the drawing one, the one that I drew, has a bigger contour. The rest of them are tight around the bird. So this is just something I just wanted to show you, that the drawing tools let you add and remove from what Leonardo detects and creates as a contour. They're kind of a brute force thing, but they are useful if you just need to tweak a little bit. And I'm going to use them when I import the laser ones. I do want the holes included. I'm going to click next. And here's what I wanted to point out. Because this came in as a JPEG, if you select outside of the contour that Leonardo has detected, which is tight, tight, tight to the inkjet image, it's going to include that white background. Okay, and the reason I'm pointing out is that is one of the differences than if I had used a ping. If I did added to the contour, there is no white background, and so this would be transparent, this area here. So that's kind of the difference between a JPEG and bringing in a ping. Personally, for this case, the inkjet, I would use the ping. So it brings it in as a layer. I don't know if you can see there is white where that bird is. Now, one of the things I've noticed is that moving these layers around, depending on where they land, if they're outside of certain boundaries, they kind of fade out and you lose them. So whatever, I'm going to move them anyway, but this is not I'm not going to use this particular image. I want the brighter image that is the ping. That was just to show you that there's a white background. If the contour is not tight, tight, tight to the bird itself, the contour will pick up the white. And then you can grab that white to move it. Okay. And you'll understand why I'm saying that when we get into the laser cuts later. So I'm going to delete that because I'm going to re-import, and this time I'm going to do the ping. And it's pretty much the same thing. I'm going to click next. 300 DPI, yep, that's great. Hit next. If I were to add to the drawing, actually, I don't want to do that. I want to leave this correct because I want the print and cut tight, tight, tight to the birds. But for whatever reason, if I were to add, since this is a ping, that extra addition would be clear. And so clicking in that area, once it was imported and on the artboard, you wouldn't be able to grab anything because it would be clear. So whatever, hopefully that's not too confusing. So I'm just going to leave it and choose the defaults. I'm going to include the holes so the contour looks great. I want the holes because this is going to be my cut and I want these little things cut out. I'm going to click next. I'm not going to do the bleed. I'm going to click finished, and I end up with, again, a layer of the 4 birds. I'm going to leave this for now, and we're going to come back and do some work on this. But the next thing we're going to do is import. We're going to stay on import, and we're going to import the laser overlays. So I'm going to just turn this off for now. And we're going to click import. And I'm going to first select the ping that we saved from Photoshop. And it comes in and it's again selecting the shapes. The background is transparent and it's selecting the shape. So there is some white that is selected. 300 DPI, that's great. Hit next. Hit next. And in this case, I don't care about the contour. I'm going to use the contour from the inkjet birds That's really what I want Juliet to be cutting. So this contour doesn't matter. I don't need the holes. Gives me a little bit more things to grab onto if I need to. And then I'm going to click next and click finished. So the reason I'm doing this is I need to move, oops, I turned, the inkjet birds are behind the laser birds. That's not generally the way I like to align things, but I can click on the white part to move them. But once this is, if this were behind, so let's move that layer behind. If I needed to move that again, it's hard to grab that layer because there's nothing to grab onto once it's behind. And I'll talk about this again, but that's why I'm going to go back and I'm going to utilize the drawing tools with the JPEG version. So for now, I'm going to turn these both off. Actually, this one, I'm going to rename it to Ping Laser. Just so if I need to show it for any reason, I know what it is. And then I'm going to leave that alone for now. So now I'm going to import, and instead of the ping, I'm going to import a JPEG that I had saved from the same outline images earlier. I just didn't show it on screen. So I'm in the same, yep, I want it print and cut. I want it 300 DPI. And it comes in, now watch. It removed the white background, but it removed the white around the birds as well, because it couldn't determine that, oh, maybe she wants the white in and around the bird. So it just removed all the white. So if I click next here, it goes through and it thinks I want the black cut. And I don't. And I really need kind of a blob around the black, because again, the contours really don't matter. The cut contours, I need all that black showing because I want it printed. So I'm going to go back, and this is where I'm going to use the drawing tools for real. So I want to make sure that I'm including, and I can use any of these things to select the birds. So let's do a rectangle first. Now let's go over here and maybe use lasso. Lasso's a little weird. Still takes some getting used to it for me. So I still need to kind of add some stuff. And you can just keep going back and adding what you need. Still keep missing that little. Let's make sure I have the tail. And then the rest of the head. And so I have everything. So then let's try the sketch. So the sketch lets me make sure that I get a selection of the birds without a lot of extra white space, because I don't want this. I'm going to move things around, and I don't want these bleeding outside of the page marks and print boundaries. I'm not going to select the middle of it, and I'll show you why in a second. And I know this one always ends up near the top, so I really don't want a big contour up there. Down here doesn't matter as much. And again, I'm not going to worry about the middle. So I'm going to click next. And it selects, but you can see I've got holes. All I have to do is click off include holes, and now I have borders around my prints. If I needed to tweak it, I could go back and say add a little bit more somewhere and keep tweaking it. And I could remove some of it. So again, the contours here aren't going to matter except for moving the layers. I'm not going to cut these contours. I need the contours kept because the way Leonardo works, in order to print these, it needs to be a print and cut. And so I haven't figured out a way to print the laser overlays without doing it this way. So I'm going to click next. No contour bleed is needed. I could add, if I wanted to make this a little bit bigger, I could add a contour bleed and just make it white and make it as big as I want. But that appears to be, it adds it, but it doesn't help me move things. And so again, really what I need is this white space. And this white space is here because it was a JPEG. And so there was a white background. Hopefully all that's clear. I think it's something you need to kind of play around with to kind of understand what I'm saying, but I wanted to show you all the different options. So in this case, I click finish, and now I have a new layer, and I could rename it, but I'm not going to, because I'm now going to come through and break everything apart. So since we're on the laser, let's just come here, and it's a group or a grouping of print and cuts. But I want to show you another thing that I discovered when I was playing around. So if I came here to this grouping and it doesn't even let me do an ungroup. So it's not a true group. Instead, if I select this and come up to paths, ungroup paths, it breaks everything apart to individual layers of cuts and prints. So I'm going to turn on page marks, and that just makes the registration marks go around the whole page. So at this point, I've got layers of the contour cut. So it's basically all those shapes I drew around the black and white image, and then the prints, which are the black and white laser images. So I can either select and click select to get matching layers if they line up. Sometimes these don't unpack where like the first cut matches the first print. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So the easiest way to do it is just use your select tool over both the print and the cuts, and then either right mouse button click group or Control G. And so I'm just going to go around, select both, hit group, select both, hit group, select both, hit group. So now I have all my individual overlays. So I'm going to shut them off for now, and we're going to go back to the inkjet, and I'm basically going to do the same thing. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to ungroup paths. So I'm left in the layers panel with all the cuts and all the prints. I'm going to click off, select this pair and group, select this pair and group, this one and group, this one and group. And now I want to go around and I'm going to move these layers, and I want to make sure that they're all within the print boundary and the page mark boundary. I have cut them where I left them as is. I have another video and post on that. And it was just a straight print and cut. It wasn't this double kind of crazy idea. It was just inkjet print and placed on the Juliet and cut. And that worked fine. But I have found that there just were things that seemed to work weirdly if I was outside of the boundaries with this project. So for this project, I am going to keep everything inside. So that all looks good. And I'm going to have to make sure that the laser groups also stay within the print border and the page marks. For now, I'm going to group the inkjet, and I'm just going to hit Control G, and I'm going to rename that inkjet. And I do want to show you something that's interesting. So now I have this inkjet group of just the inkjet prints. If I came up here and did ungroup paths, it breaks it down into the individual cut and prints again. So if you look at the layer, they're group kind of like at least grouped together a little bit better in this way, but they're still all individual layers. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. I'm back to my inkjet group. Instead now, if I do right mouse button click ungroup, it breaks it down into the groups that I created. So that's good if I needed to ungroup these and say I needed to tweak one of the groups and move it. For now, I'm just going to undo, and so I'm back to my grouping named inkjet. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to turn on the groups of the laser, and I'm just going to tell you to trust me on this rather than getting even more confusing. If I were to, so I need the inkjet turned on because I need to align my laser prints with it. If I were to use the laser import from the ping, trying to move these, and especially because I like to have the inkjet in front of the laser prints to be able to move, and I'll show you that a little bit better in a minute. But if I were to move this, and we're not going to use this, and then I drop it and I need to move it again, it's very hard to get at that ping image because there's nothing sticking out from behind. So I'm gonna undo all of that because I just moved everything. And I'm gonna turn off the ping layer because we're not gonna end up using that. I'm gonna move the inkjet down so it's in front of the laser import groups that I am going to use. And now I'll show you again why I like this way of doing things better. So if I zoom in, if I were, so let's do this. I'm going to take this bluebird and I'm going to move this laser group in front. If I were to move this, there's no opacity, at least I'm in the base version of Leonardo. I don't know if there's, if you can set something to be more transparent in the paid for version, but in this one, there's no setting for going transparent until you go to move something and it becomes transparent, so you can kind of line it up with the inkjet image. But if this is in front of the inkjet image, you're going to see a ghost of this front image, and it's hiding the inkjet. So I can kind of line up the beak, but I can't see the rest. I can't see the tail. I can't see anything else. So I can kind of sort of move it, but I'm not entirely sure whether it's aligned or not. So instead, if I move it behind the inkjet, and now because I used a JPEG, because I used contours that stuck out from around the black and white image, I can click on the white and move it. And now that it's in front, now that it's behind, the inkjet image stays as the ghost. And so I can better see what I'm doing when I'm trying to line up the images. I'm not doing a great job here. There we go. And so since the contour cuts for the laser prints don't matter, this I feel like is just the better way to do it. And when lining up, having them behind just seems easier to me. So we're going to line that up. A little tweak. That looks pretty good. And it's bleeding off, so I'm going to show you how to deal with that in a minute. So now I'm going to move this one. And that one, I know this kind of is off a little bit, so I'm just going to leave that there for now. And move this one. And that looks good. Okay, so I can go back to 100%, check out how everything seems to be doing. These top two look good. These bottom two, this one's getting really close to the page mark and the print boundary, and so is this one. It's actually outside. So here again, if I come back to the inkjet and I select that layer and click right mouse button, click ungroup, I'm back to the groups for the inkjets. I also have the groups for the laser. Since they're now aligned, if I select all, I've got both the inkjet and the laser, and I can just move that so it's inside. Everything stays aligned and it's inside the boundaries. And then I can do the same thing on this side, select everything here and tweak this so it lands within the boundaries. And now, because I moved that, I've got to tweak this one. And so it goes. And that looks good, and that looks good, and that looks good. Okay, so they're all within the page marks and the page boundaries. And again, especially with the laser prints, probably more important for when I was printing through Leonardo. And you'll see in the next step, I'm going to do something different here. But in any event, I have my groups. And so now I can click on the layers, and the front ones I know are the inkjets. So I'm going to select click, group those together, call that inkjet. And then click, control click, control click, control click. And that will be my laser. Hopefully I did that right. So if I click off the inkjet, there's my laser. And if I click off laser, there's my inkjet. So for my example, my laser print is behind the inkjet, and it doesn't stick out. The laser image itself is neatly contained within the contours of the inkjet image. And so there's no black sticking out that I might need to avoid printing. If yours, either the laser was in front or there was, black sticking out, outside of the inkjet, and you didn't want that printed on the inkjet, then you would turn off the laser layer. But for my purposes, there's no black showing, and so it's fine the way it is. So I'm going to send design, and again, it looks like I want it to be printed. That's great. I'm going to hit send. And just to point out, this is what the cutting contours would look like. Actually, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a future step. So let's just stay on. We're on print artwork. I would generally, if I was staying in Leonardo, print this with my printer, but I'm not. I'm going to actually print this from Photoshop. But I needed to do all of this work because I needed those registration marks. I think once I've gone through this once and I have the registration marks, I believe I don't need to do this step anymore. That's my thinking. I haven't verified that yet, but that's my thinking. So what I'm going to do instead of printing to the printer is I'm going to print to a printable PDF. So save it as a PDF. So I'm going to save, and I've already kind of done this before, so I'm going to click this name and call it Inkjet Demo for Birds and click OK. And it's interesting, it doesn't tell me that it overwrote it. And I don't know why it does that, but so it's in there. It looks fine, looks the way that I wanted it to. So I'm going to just get rid of that because I don't need it right now. And then I'm going to go back to design. Now at this point, I don't want the inkjet showing because I want to just print the black and white, because this is what will be sent to my laser. So I'm going to send design. That all looks good. I'm going to click OK. And again, instead of selecting printer, I'm going to choose printable PDF and then save it. And I'm going to call it that. I just want to make sure that of something. So I'm going to name it number 2. And that's good. Surprised it didn't bring that up. Let me just go over here and make sure it's there. Yep. I don't know why I didn't bring it back up, but in any event. So now I have saved both the inkjet print and the laser print, both of them including registration marks, within 2 PDFs. And I'm now going to stop this clip and we're going to pop back over to Photoshop, and that's where I'm actually going to do the printing. Okay, so we are back in Adobe, and I am going to open the PDFs that we just created. And where are they? So the laser birds and the inkjet birds. I'm going to open them up in Photoshop. And I'm going to click OK. Resolution is correct. That looks good. And then same thing. So that's interesting the way it saved it. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, So when I left the inkjet birds, when I went to print the inkjet birds, I left the laser birds turned on, and it actually included that white background in the save. So it's not going to really matter all that much, but I probably, just to not have it as distracting, I probably would have turned that off if I had known that it was going to do that. So that's interesting. In any event, I've got my inkjet birds with the registration marks. So I'm going to select all and Control C. So Control A to select all, Control C to copy. And I'm going to create a new file with I just set it up the way that I like it, with the right, like the RGB color profile, 300, resolution, and 8.5 by 11 to print. And so I could either Control C, Control V, or I could have just slid the whole thing over. So the other way I could have done it is just come in here and grab the layer, dragged it across, hit Control Shift, and it ends up centering the birds with the registration marks. So that's probably a quicker way to do it rather than the Control C, Control V. So now I have my birds with the registration marks, and I need to do the same thing for and I don't need this anymore, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Nope. And then I'm gonna find my laser birds, and I'm gonna do the same thing. And in here, and I'm gonna get rid of that. In Adobe, I have the ability for transparency, so I can turn this down just to make sure, are they still aligned? And yes, they are. So the whole reason I had to save the laser as a PDF was because I moved everything from the original file that I was creating in. So if I hadn't moved them within Leonardo, I could just bring in the layer, the outline layer, so I didn't have to worry about registration marks. And I could just bring those in and, move the overlay, but they're in a different formation. And so let me just shut off the ones that I brought in. And so they're misaligned. If the way I had this set up initially, the birds were within the print and page mark boundaries of Leonardo, and I didn't have to break them apart and move them all, I wouldn't have had to save the laser from Leonardo. I could have just grabbed it from the Adobe file and used that. And that is because, and the reason you might want to do that is I want to print the inkjet birds with the registration marks. I do not want to print the laser registration marks. And the reason for that is I need to offset, because of, again, the whole problem that I ran into when I was trying to do this start to finish in Leonardo is my printers are older. They have different margins. Inkjet versus the laser, they have different margins, and the software that goes along with those printers do not allow me the granularity to fine tune it as far as I could tell, and I spent a lot of time on it, I could not fine tune the margins to the point where I could get a print on the inkjet, put it in the laser, print on the top, and have those registration marks align perfectly. I couldn't figure out a way in Leonardo to turn off the registration marks when I printed the laser. So that is why I'm doing it now, parts of it in Leonardo, but bringing it into Photoshop. So if I turn off the inkjet for a moment, you can see I still have the laser. Well, let's turn the opacity up on this layer. So bring it back up full opacity. I have the registration marks. I don't want those printed, not for the laser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use you could use whatever tool you want. I'm just going to use the lasso, and I'm going to select one. I'm going to shift, select the other. I'm going to shift and select this one down here, and then this one here. And I'm going to hit Control X to cut. And then I am going to create a new layer and edit, paste in place, and then shut that off. So now I have just a laser. And so my thinking is, if I have this where it's just, so if I do this one time and I have these registration marks, I feel like I could bring in print and cuts, align them, and just print them directly from here, rather than going through the whole section that I just did previously, and basically import, move them around, export, or save as a PDF. I don't feel like I have to do that every time. So what I would probably do is set up a file. So I know I'm digressing again, but I would probably set up a file, and I would do a marquee, a rectangle that fits within those registration marks. Create a new layer, say behind it, fill it with some color, whatever color you want. And then I can, I did a terrible job of selecting that. So it doesn't have to be exact. It would be exact if I were doing this for real. But this is just to kind of illustrate the point. So, sorry, I don't know what I just did there. So this is just going to be my guide. I want to, so I can go back to my original file and say, okay, I want these birds. I'm going to select this guy. And I'm going to paste them in here. And I can, move them around so that they fit within this boundary. Do the same with the laser. Line it up and do all the lining up, all the arranging in here, and then shut off the background, obviously. But now everything's within the print and page mark boundaries, and then just print from here. So that's what I'm thinking. So I'm thinking the whole previous section had to be done once, basically to get the registration marks, I think. I haven't verified that, but that's what I'm thinking. So hopefully that is not super confusing, but I'm going to turn off the registration marks because I don't want those for the lasers. And now I would come through and I'd hit print. And I would choose my Epson, my inkjet printer. Make sure, yep, everything looks good. Hit OK and hit print. And that's going to go off and start. And I'm going to pause while that's going on. Okay, so that printed, and I now placed it in my laser printer. And so here is what I had to do based on my two printers. So in the post and video where I tried to do the whole thing from Leonardo Design Studio and was trying to print from there, I tried using the print properties of the laser to try and tweak the margins enough to get the double prints lined up. And I came very close, but it wasn't perfect. So, and it looked great for the outline around the birds. However, it was the registration marks that were off. And so, in this case, I can get rid of the print of the registration marks for the laser, and I don't have to worry about lining it up. So so now these are aligned, and if we go to the laser layer, we can kind of bring the opacity down so you can see, yep, that looks good. Everything's lined up. Perfect. Bring it back up, shut off the inkjet. And so now we're just going to print just the birds. Again, no registration marks. However, because my printers have the different margin issue, I know from Photoshop that I need to move this image or this layer or all these images down 2 millimeters and over a 0.5 millimeter. And the easiest way that I found to do that is, oh, maybe I should make that an action actually. I didn't even think of that. Is I go to the layer, come up here to X in transform in the properties panel, and I just type in plus 0.5 mm and hit enter, and it does the math for me. I'm not actually sure it actually moves it over at all because it's such a small value, but it still seems to work. And then I do the same thing, so I know I need to go down, so I do plus on the Y setting, plus 2 mm. And if you were looking at the screen, it just jumps. So if I undo move, there's the move, and then redo, and then so it looks to me like it barely moves it over, if it does at all. Maybe if my if it really had to be precise and it wasn't working without that 0.5 millimeter, I could go into preferences, turn it back to, or turn it to millimeters, and then I'm assuming that would be better. But I know that this has worked where it's close enough that it works fine. And so now I can print from the laser printer. So I'm going to click laser and print settings, and I'm going to click just the normal print because I wanted to use the tray that I like. This for my printer, I'm printing on cardstock, and so transparency works the best for this configuration. And if we go to layout, so just in case you watched my previous video where I was struggling, there's no margin shift. I did not adjust the print position. That's what I ended up having to use from Leonardo. And then the margins are set to their defaults. So, it's just a regular print. I've done the print position in effect by moving it down and over in Adobe. And so I can just click print and let it go. And when all of that is done, I will load it on the mat for the Juliet, and I will be back. Okay, so I have the mat loaded with the print that came out of the laser. And I'm going to do another clip where I show you all that through my camera. And I actually did a boo-boo in my last step. I picked the wrong, when I canceled out, I ended up picking the wrong print settings. And so it cut totally wrong, but I'll show you that and just reprint it again using the correct print settings, and it was fine. So now we have to go through and get back to the design panel so that I can get the cutting contours set up correctly. And so I just want to show you, so if I were to leave both laser and inkjet turned on, go to send design, this time we're looking for the cut contours, not the prints. And so if I were to select cutting contours, if I have both layers on, you could see both cutting contours, and I don't want the laser ones. Again, those were only there so that I could print. So I can go back to design and shut off the laser, go back to send design, and go to cutting contours, and now I have the cutting contours of the bird or the birds. And so I would send to cutter, and I always choose advance to the end of cut and then click OK. And so then I will meet you back in the next clip so you can see all that set up. Okay, I am back, and I wanted to show you, excuse me. So I screwed up and used the wrong cut settings, and so the first ones are way off, if you can see. But I ended up reprinting, and this time I did turn the registration marks on for the laser print, and they're still off, but they're closer than they were printing from Leonardo. So I think I could probably still tweak a little bit and maybe get them to line up. But again, printing from Photoshop, I don't really need to print them. So best practice is just turn off, get rid of the registration marks on the laser layer. And so I don't know if you can see, it's kind of confusing, but the outline of the bird lined up much better on the, when I use the right settings. It's just the registration marks that are off by a hair. And so this I reprinted, and you can see on the mat that there's only one set of registration marks, so that's perfect. Interesting, when they print the registration marks in the PDF, it's got like a little notch cut out of it, so that's interesting. And for the most part, again, I think I could tweak a little bit. That might have been off to begin with, that bird. And so I probably could have done a better job lining that up, and probably could have tweaked it within Photoshop, but I just missed it. So in any event, it's ready to cut, so I'm gonna go set that all up and run the cut job. Okay, so it's reading the registration marks. Hopefully it won't have trouble. Shouldn't with single ones. Okay, so it's going to go off and cut, and when it's done, I will be back. Okay, so everything is cut. And again, as always, try to do this one-handed. Let's see how this is going to work. That guy got stuck. All right, let's just look at two that are left on the mat. So, yeah, that's literally a perfect cut. So, much easier to do once you're used to it. I mean, I know this is a long video, and it was probably confusing at parts. Probably be easier to kind of watch it as you do it, but in general, that's a pretty good cut. I don't know what happened there. I'm not sure what happened there. Oh, I guess I just had it misaligned a little bit to the cut. So I missed a little bit of the tail edge. But it cut great. That was probably just my bad. And again, because there's no double registration marks, the cut is near perfect. So thanks again for joining me. Hopefully this was not too confusing. Again, if you are looking to do print and cuts like this with the laser overlays, it's just better to have the single from Photoshop versus the double. And again, depending on your printer, you may not have trouble. Your printers may align pretty perfectly or have software, like I said before, that helps you work with margins and gives better granularity so you can get them perfect. But if you're running and struggling with the printers like I was, doing it from Photoshop works great. So thanks for joining me today. See you next time.